Hello and welcome back to Vox Mundi and the fourth update video. In this video I will briefly talk about all of the changes I've done since the last update video. But before I do that, I would like to inform you that I am now open for suggestions of what to play and what goals to fulfill. Yes, I want to get this campaign started soon, because Art of War is coming out and I want to get this started before that hits the shelves. So while I scroll around the map today, take a look at the nations and see if there's anything exciting you'd like me to do. Anyway, let me start explaining some of the changes I've done while you take a look at the map. Here in the Italian area, I have added in an event, very like the Iberian Wedding, for Ferrara and Lombardy. They may form a union if Lombardy's legitimacy is very low. And if they do, they can decide to form the Ferraran Commonwealth, which absorbs Lombardy and gives them claims on the rest of Italy. I have also added in a formable Great Köln here in the German area, which requires one of the nations to take out the other two, basically. And the same thing for Baghdad here. Baghdad can conquer Medina and Alexandria, or the other way around, and form the Great Baghdadian Caliphate. No, actually not Caliphate, it's just Great Baghdad. I don't actually think there was a Caliphate ever in CK2. Anyway, I have done a few changes to the world here and there. In India, I have broken off the vassals and personal unions of Asni and Myanapura. Asni is still the strongest power here. Very odd, I know, but the Mamluks have not survived a single game. But I can't give them more land. They have so much land already, they should be doing better than they are. Anyway, just so you know that they're actually quite underpowered in this area. So Asni and Maru and Avanti, Konkana, Myanapura and Pandya Nadu are now independent. In the Holy Roman Empire, I have a little cheat sheet I'm reading off, so I'm not forgetting anything. Anyway, Moravia starts out with an enormous imperial authority bonus of 200%, which only lasts for a few years, but it gives them time enough to pass a few reforms. I did this because I wanted this Holy Roman Empire to be more centralized than the one in our timeline. And I also want to make the possibility of actually forming Great Moravia something that is very, very plausible. It's happened in one of the test games even, so I know it's possible to do. I have done something here to South Anglia and Valois. Valois is now much stronger than he used to be, which means that in the beginning of any one game, Valois will either start by declaring an independence war against South Anglia, or South Anglia will drag Valois into a war against North Anglia. It can really go either way. In about 50% of the games, Valois have been free, and in about 50% South Anglia has kept the personal union. So it's much more balanced now, because before then they kept Valois 100% of the time, because Valois never fought back. Now they are actually the second strongest nation at the start of the game. So I've added a few I've actually added one Easter egg event requested by a viewer. If Vinland here, which is Norse, borders a Buddhist nation, there is a slight chance that the Unstoppable Force event triggers and they turn Buddhist. And in the case of Vinland, they will actually also turn into the United States of America. So that's a little Easter egg that we will probably not see, but it's in there, just so you know. Speaking of Vinland, I've done some things here. This is the same classic setup, but there's a big difference. Vinland is, as you know, it's Eastern tech and it is Norse. But I've also made a custom government for it, called a Jarldom, which gives them a colonist. And that colonist is put there so that they wouldn't have to rely on expansion ideas. Because expansion ideas make them colonize all of America before the colonizers even get there. 1 colonist and 10 colonial growth is enough to make them large enough to hold their own. The thing here is not necessarily changes to Vinland though, it's a dynamic I've introduced to the native tribes. As a native tribe, you've usually had to westernize and change your government and stuff, and it was all a tedious process. What you can do now, though, is you can forsake, basically, you can fall to the dark side, so to say, because this Viking nation here is not the friendliest of nations. No. If they conquer a Native American, like the Mi'kmaq here, for example, that produce fish, they will turn this resource into slaves. Yep, Vinland is like the scum of the earth. They will practice slavery in a very large scale here in America. And the only way for these poor unfortunate souls here to actually overcome Vinland is to adapt to its horrible ways. So they may choose to become a nation like Vinland. Basically, they become a slave state to fight Vinland. They get the technology Eastern, and they turn into a Norse jarldom. They require good relations with Vinland, or they have to be a protectorate of Vinland to do it. But when they've done so, the other ones can follow suit, and there can be a chain reaction here that triggers almost all of North America to do this. And I've had it happen in one of my test games, and it was incredibly interesting because they started fighting each other. They started colonizing with the Jarldom colonist, and they held their own against the Westerners when they came and arrived on the coast. It was awesome, and it worked really well. So that's one of the things that's changed here. And also, if one of these nations take back a slave state that has their culture, it will revert back to the previous trade good. But if the Iroquois has conquered another Native American here with an unaccepted culture, it will turn into a slave state as well if the Iroquois have turned into a Norse jarldom. So that's one of the changes I've done here. I've spent a lot of time on it and tweaked it a lot. And it's very fun. Of course, it's not balanced because they turn Eastern immediately. But for this scenario, it makes sense because it's not like westernizing. You sacrifice a lot to do this. Anyway, that's that. Let's take a look at something else. I've added a small buffer state between Hamadan and Baghdad called Iraq, with a new culture called Iraqi. Nothing special really, they're just there to prevent early wars between Hamadan and Baghdad. Let's jump to China. Here in China I've had to rebalance quite a few things, because first, Mongolia turned out to be overpowered, for some reason, I don't know why. So I split off a part of them into a new nation called Chisao here. And Chisao is a Mazdaki Han nation. Nothing special, but it's interesting to have it there. It's the only Mazdaki Chinese nation, so there's yet another religion added to the mix here. In turn, it turned out that Oirat was the one that got overpowered, so I did two things to them. I split off Uzbek here, another horde. They have also migrated eastwards, fleeing the Kyrgyz. And the Oirats have lost their personal holdings here in Japan. Instead, it's held by Ainu, which is a vassal of them. Ainu and the Iko-Iki, Shiba and Hosokawa and Naochi usually have a great battle over Japan. Ainu usually breaks free. And it's very interesting to see. I have also recolored a lot of nations, as you may notice. I've hopefully made it more easy to tell them apart. And I had to change the light pink of Sheng to another color, because they got confusing when they colonized next to Valois. Anyway, in general I have boosted tech levels slightly. Muslim, Indian and Chinese has received a 10% boost, just to make them a bit more competitive with each other and the Western world and the hordes. So, there's a few more things that I want to show you. I have renamed the Norse cultures to Heilasta Norse and Vikapi Norse. And I've also renamed Romanized Tatar to Tartaresk. All suggestions from viewers. Another quite big thing I've done, it's not necessarily a huge thing, but it took some work. I've added some breakaway states to large nations. One of the things you do in Vanilla EU4 is force nations to release smaller nations to prevent them from expanding in certain areas. You don't necessarily take them for yourself. Anyway, here in Krioklochlan, possibly the largest two-area nation, I've added 3, and no, actually 4. On Gotland we have a Gotland core. I've reused that from Vanilla. In Dalaskogen here we have, in Eidisva, Värmland and Dalaskogen, the cores of Glianta. In Bergslagen, Närke and Östergötland we have the cores of Soirgautland. And in Akershus, Bohuslän and Västergötland we have the cores of Anbra. So there's a few breakaway states here, except for Sapmi, which makes it very interesting. And when they get conquered and resurge, they resurge at several different nations, which is very interesting to see. Jämtland has one as well. It's Stockholm. Stockholm is a breakaway state, together with Åland. Jylland also has one. In Småland, Blekinge, Skåne and Halland, they can be released as Skåne. I've not added any more to this area, it's still just Scotland. In Valois, I've added Liege. I've tried to add one to every big nation, basically. One little breakaway nation you can release in a peace deal. So Valois has Liege, Spain has Granada, Seville has Galicia, Fez has Algiers together with Tripoli, and Lombardy has Savoy, Sydköln has Tyrol, Thuringia has Frankfurt and Augsburg, the Fraticelli Papacy has Hanover, and that's pretty much it, I believe. I didn't add any to the eastern and northern nations, because they split apart easily enough anyway. Oh, one of the things I did, by the way, was I removed the personal union between Dacia and Crimea, because Dacia turned out to be way too powerful in every single test. Now they are balanced. Much better than when they always inherited Crimea, I can tell you. I have also modified a lot of ideas, and I'm not talking about national ideas, because national ideas are mainly standard, vanilla standard, except for the Chinese ones. I've just modified the order nations take ideas in, with respect to all of the suggestions I've gotten. So, for example, Congo and Brunei can colonize if the stars align in just the exact way. You know, things like that. The Indian nations are defensive, and I've added some naval ideas here and there, etc. That's the bulk of the things I've done. You can probably see the other things I've changed. I've changed some borders here and there. It's probably really evident. It's just that I forget things when I do them on the fly. So take a look at the world and think about suggestions for what I should play or what I could play. And if there's anything you would like me to change before I start playing, please tell me in the comments of this video. Because I do want to play, I do want to start playing soon. And before I end this video, I can show you some of the saves, some of the Spectator games I've played. So let's get back to the menu, and I will first show you one of the games where there's a cascading Norse influence in America. I named it Norse is Spreading here. So let's ignore that and take a look here. As you can see, Vinland has spread slightly. They don't see much. But when they got really friendly with Ottawa here, Ottawa flipped and became Eastern, Norse, and a Jarldom, and almost everyone followed suit here. So there's some that still refuse, like the Iroquois, but most and the Abenaki. But we do have the Assiniboine, we have the Potawatomi, the Shawnee, and a few more, I believe. I believe the Mi'kmaq as well. Yes. So they're cascading outwards, and as you can see, Ottawa has already started colonizing from the Jarldom ideas. That's actually one thing that I had a hard time doing, just speaking of colonizing in general. Making nations colonize seems very random. I want Antalam Faith to colonize, but they rarely do, and I don't know why. And Iceland will never colonize, so I just removed their colonization ideas because they were wasted on them. Anyway, let me show you some 1821 results. This is the latest game, the Observer Game 5, and it's closest to what I showed you. As you can see, North America is mainly Vinland, but there's also some civilian nations and a lot of Valois nations, because in this game Valois broke free very early. And as you can see, there's some Anglian, some civilian, Castilian, and Fraticelli mainly. There's also a few Shelender nations, so those nations were the ones that won the colonization race. And here you can see, this is a typical Europe after a few hundred years. We have Jämtland and Själland in Scandinavia. That's usually the case. Lithuania, yeah, strong. Anglia has formed. Antalam Faith is just Ireland. Valois is strong. We have Sydköln and Fraticelli Papacy. Pisa. Well, you can see. The Mycenae Republic has resurged. That's interesting. Cardox won against Baghdad and wiped them out entirely. Alexandria took on Damot and won. Sibir has gotten cut off by the Oirats. This is why I needed to nerf the Oirats. I think you can see why. Just take a look at this. This is insane. And yeah, I have some other Observer games for you to take a look at that are even older. This one, Observer Game number 4. I did a lot of changes of this one. This is the one that made me nerf Dacia, as you can see clearly why. And it's the same deal here with Anglia and Ireland. It seems to be quite common. But in this one, Castile has won out big, and together with Valois and Lombardy. And the Americas look like this. I actually nerfed Vinland after this to make what you saw in the previous save. But then I nerfed them again, so they shouldn't expand just this much anymore. They should still expand a lot, but yeah. And South America, quite as expected. Africa, yeah, this is why I changed the Damot's technology group, because Eastern Tech just steamrolls the Muslims here, and you can see why I didn't want that. India and Chagatai, and this is why I nerfed Mongolia. I think you can see why. Once again, it is perfectly evident why. And for fun, let's take a look at Observer Game 3. I think Observer Game 3 is the last videos. Yeah, the last update video. This is an Observer game from that. As you can see, Anglia has eliminated Antalam Faith. Bourbon is big. I like this area because it's always random, except for the fact that Lombardy never gets destroyed. But in this game, Castile is gone and replaced entirely by Seville. And Krioklochlan is actually around, which is amazing. And you can see here there's some nations in the HRE that are stronger than others. Balaton, for example. And once again, we have a massive Asni, or Indian. And once again, Mongolia, way too strong. But this time around, Sibir has conquered quite a bit of stuff. Very interesting that he actually took on Kyrgyz and won. So anyway, that's how it can look when you just let it run for a few hundred years. Hopefully it will look entirely different when I play as different nations throughout these 400 years of history, so please let me know any suggestions you have, and I will see you again soon. Thank you for watching.